President Trump made his first presidential address to Congress, and it was the longest speech in history. In his address, Trump declared the U.S. will be woke no longer. And after 100 minutes of him speaking, no one was.
Oh, look at him. Look at him trying to make a joke with the language there, Jimmy. That's a good try, but a fail nonetheless. They'll keep trying. And welcome to Thursday. It is the Chris Plante Show. Mr. Plante's still under the weather. Mike Opelka, that's me, sitting in for my buddy. And, we're 2 days away from the speech now, and the Democrats are still trying to figure out what hit them. It feels like that anyway. One of the people who used to use the word woke all the time, she used to end her public statements with "stay woke" all the time, was Maxine Waters, Anti-Max. Maxine Waters was the most affected, I think, by Trump derangement syndrome. I really think she's the one who was hit the hardest, the earliest. She has always been anti-Trump. She's the one who used to walk around telling everybody, when you see his people in public, you surround them and you make them uncomfortable at a gas station or at a restaurant or something. She has been the angriest of the angry people. Maxine Waters. Woke, woke, woke. And she also did not attend the speech. She was not in the audience in the House of Representatives for President Trump's address. Now, why is that? Why would she not be there? They had a whole plan for people to either not go or walk out or create a disturbance. Maxine Waters didn't even show up. Maybe her wig was in the shop. I don't know. Who knows? But she was not there. She found time, though, to get over to the Joy Reid show. Wait a minute, Mike. I thought the Joy Reid show was gone. MSNBC dropped it like a bad transmission. Yes, they did. But Joy Reid now has a show on the YouTubes. And Maxine Waters was on the show, and she was asked, why weren't you there?
We want to know why you chose not to participate in the State of the Union tonight.
I was not about to put up with that bull that he was going to talk about tonight. He's everything absolutely awful that you can describe in a human being. I've never met anything like him before.
She's broken. She's terribly, horribly broken. Maxine Waters has been broken by President Trump. She couldn't even go to the speech. She couldn't contain herself. She had to curse. At least they bleeped her. At least they bleeped her. But yeah, they're still mad. They're all still mad. They've lost their minds. They've lost their ever-loving minds. They're blinded by their rage and anger. And there are facts out there that they're just not willing to deal with. They're just going with feelings. Representative Katherine Clark is one such person. She's the Democratic whip in the House of Representatives. She looks like she could brandish a whip, too. I'm making a value judgment there. I realize that. Representative Katherine Clark joined a bunch of Democrats yesterday to trash President Trump's address, and she made no sense either.
I am angry today. I am angry when I saw that president of the United States who ran and had people vote for him because he said he was going to cut their costs, he was going to make sure they had a chance at the American dream, has come in with an unelected, richest man on earth and taken a chainsaw to everything we care about, everything the American people put their trust in him to do. It is a betrayal.
So Katherine Clark is mad because the president of the United States doesn't want to spend money on making rats transgender. Interesting. And she went on ranting for quite some time. But I'm checking. I'm double checking. I don't think there is any great cry for more transgender rats or transgender mice or even transgender children to be mutilated. They've lost it. They are a rudderless ship at this point. And we're watching. You've got Tim Walz, who says the voters are in charge of the Democratic Party. You've got Gavin Newsom, who's trying to interview Republicans. You've got AOC, who's saying that some Democrats voted for Trump, some Democrats didn't. Gee, how amazing. What do you think? Let's talk about this. The phone lines, of course, 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Let's talk to Sid in Los Angeles. Hello, Sid. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm good, sir. What's up in your world?
Well, what's up? I think people are looking not in the correct way of how this money in the government is being spent. When you're talking about transgender, they believe in this. They believe that money should be spent in research in these areas and all these
Who's they? Who's they, Sid? When you say that, that's a pretty general statement. Who's they?
The Democratic Party. The Democratic Party believe in them. This is their belief. They're elected, and they're going to spend money in areas that they believe in. When Trump came in, some was now looking at where all the money is going. He said, this is all crazy. But that's the people have elected Trump. I think it's Congress's fault. They give all this bulk of money, billions and billions of dollars to be spent, and the people in charge spent, like giving $2 billion to Stacey Abrams. No one in Congress is looking at the line items in these huge budgets. So they're in charge, and they can spend freely on their beliefs. So a new person comes in and looks at it and says it's all stupid. If they get elected again, they'll do that again. We need someone to be really supervising how the money's spent, so there's a transparency to get people. When the people know how the money is being spent, they're going to be voting against them. But it's not wasteful spending in their eyes. It's part of their goals and their belief system to spend money in these areas.
Well, it is helping us expose those belief systems and hopefully then change the way that money is spent. And I think we're headed in that direction, Sid. I hope you feel better. Thank you for calling. Let us check in with Bob in Waldorf, Maryland. Hello, Bob.
Good morning. And your last caller's point is what I wanted to talk about. Kevin McCarthy put forth those big omnibus bills. That's a Republican. The Republicans have sat here, and Trump has been in office for basically 2 months now, have not put the tax bill in front of him to sign to make those tax cuts permanent. They have put nothing but the Lincoln-Riley Act in front of him. The Republican Party, if you'll remember, in 2018, 45 of them retired, basically surrendering incumbency, handing the House of Representatives to Nancy Pelosi, who just raised holy hell through the thing. But the Republican Party, you've got to acknowledge that in Congress and the Senate are completely worthless. Executive orders are wonderful, but they're not law. Everything that he signed as an executive order, that needs to come from Congress, from the Senate, to be signed into law if you want to make this stuff permanent. But, to sit back and say just the Democrats, McCarthy, what was his name? McCarthy. He was the Speaker of the House. He put forth an omnibus bill right there before Christmas, and that's what they're trying to do. Again, the government's getting ready to shut down, the 14th? They can't get that right. They've been in charge. So at some point, Michael, you're going to have to say the Republican Party is completely worthless as far as Congress and the Senate goes in doing their job.
Well, I appreciate your passion, but I think that's a tad extreme. I was talking about how we go forward on this process 2 hours ago, this morning, with Byron Donalds, because he is one of the people who's working with the president and with the party leaders to try and get this thing in the reconciliation phase. The way this has to go, because it is a gigantic bill, number one, and because you can't just do it in a simple matter like the Laken Riley Act, there are a couple of little twists and turns that have to happen in order for this reconciliation between the House bill and the Senate bill. And they're working on it right now. And you have to remember the Senate, with its small majority, is still a stronger majority than the House. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And it is currently underway. It's not as simple as a Laken Riley Act, which is easier to get stuff together. And they're really working on it. I do believe that, especially hearing that from Byron this morning. Staying on this topic, let's go to Nick in Florida. Hello, Nick. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, brother. My prayers go out to Chris there. We may God help him and get him healed up there and bring him back. But you're a wonderful person to be putting in substitute there, and we appreciate everything you're doing. You're doing a marvelous job.
Thank you, sir. I'm praying for him too. He is my buddy.
Amen, brother. But I think I have an explanation as to why the Democrats, of course, when they panned across there, and of course they look like a circus between everything from purple-haired lesbians to bald black ladies to Representative Green, who jumped up and made it really just reminded me of the idiocy we already knew he perpetrated, But anyway, I think I have an explanation as to why they didn't even stand for a child who's recovering from cancer and his ambitions and aspirations and to seeing his dreams being realized. They're not even stand up for that, or they didn't stand up for the angel families and they got up and were recognized there and didn't stand for a gentleman who actually stood over his wife and children when shots rang out over at Butler there and protected and gave his life protecting his family. They didn't stand and they didn't clap. And you know why? It's because they're appalled. How dare we complain about their more important party and socialist ambitions? How dare we, Obama, their transformation of America? How dare we interrupt that? How dare we interrupt their flow of illegal immigrations that they can come in and make into dependents and hopefully give them voting rights so that they can take over this mostly white and country, and transform things. How dare we? How dare we get in front of their woke and ideology? And how dare we? That's where they stand.
Well, Nick,
they are the 20%.
Nick, I thank you for your call. I will make two comments here. Number one, you're not wrong. They're offended that anyone would think differently than they do. But I will also say, look, as a guy who's follically challenged, somebody loses their hair, as one Democratic representative has done, one female Democratic representative. I'm not going to take a shot at her. And Rosa DeLauro with her crazy hair and her attire, looking like, as my friend Rich calls her, a first grade or a kindergarten art teacher. I'm not going to critique her attire or her hair color. I will go after their policies. I think we win when we talk policies. I think that's where we are successful. But before we go to break, I'll share one thought with you. In terms of not standing for a 13-year-old who has bravely fought cancer and had operation after operation, one of the members of the squad, a Democrat rep from Texas, said not standing and not clapping was more respectful than clapping. They're delusional. They're stupid. I know we're not supposed to call them stupid, but I just did. It is the Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plante. Join us, 888-630-9625. Chris Plante Show.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plante Show. Mike Opelka, that's me, sitting in for my buddy Chris Plante. Oh, boy, we've got a lot going on. The House, I think, just voted to censure Al Green, the cane-bearing Al Green. And somebody noticed Al Green, when he was ushered out of the House for his bad behavior on Tuesday night, that he didn't require his cane, that he was walking just fine, holding that cane up in the air. Does he really need that cane? Maybe he's using it to get better parking. I wonder. We shall see. Trying to squeeze a couple more calls. You guys are very active on the phones today. 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Brad is in Key West, Florida. Hello, Brad. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, I've talked with Chris a few times. I'm actually in the redwoods of California right now. I'm driving back to Key West. Chris and I have a very similar background. We both grew up in the North Shore of Chicago. His high school is my rival. We both got kicked out of high school. And, one day I was at a restaurant in Northbrook, and a gentleman sitting next to me was his brother. And it was after Rush Limbaugh died. And I felt a void. And he said, "You better listen to my brother." And I turned on Chris Plante's show, and the opening song of "Jump Into the Fire" by Harry Nilsson, I said, I'm in. That's one of my favorite rock songs ever.
Well, Brad, we may have run into each other. I grew up in the same subdivision in Glenview that Chris grew up in, and we were neighbors, if you will. So it's a small world, my friend.
I mean, yeah, I grew up in Northbrook. Anyways,
got to be quick.
I've always wanted to ask Chris this, so I'm asking you. How come NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN have an FCC license to lie and broadcast to the people?
We'll talk about that. I'm up against the wall, Brad, but I'll get to that after the break on the Chris Plante Show. Welcome back to the Chris Plante Show. It is not Chris Plante. He's still under the weather. My name is Mike Opelka. I've been here before. And when Chris needs me, I try to always make myself available. I mentioned to our caller just before the break that, yes, Chris and I grew up in the same neighborhood on the north side of Chicago. And it was like the Wonder Years, kids riding around on their bikes. The question was, why does the FCC permit networks like NBC and CBS and ABC to openly lie to spread misinformation? And the question is, I guess, about what is the job of the FCC. If you are telling lies on air and defaming, besmirching, slandering people, there are legal remedies for that. There are ways to stop that from happening. In fact, President Trump is currently engaged in a very, very powerful suit against CBS News for what they did during the election, how they twisted the interview with Kamala Harris, how they actually edited different answers into the questions that she was asked. And the lawsuit is expected to probably settle before it goes into any kind of real serious position. And President Trump stands to benefit greatly from this. Now, he did successfully sue Meta/Facebook, whatever you want to call it. And Zuckerberg settled ahead of the election. I think it was for $15 million. But that money was not put in the pockets of President Trump. He insisted that it be donated to whatever Trump Presidential Library, Presidential Museum happens after he completes his service to the country. But I anticipate CBS is going to have to pay handsomely. And there are legal remedies available to people when someone spreads misinformation. Now, there also are remedies that are, I guess you could call them punitive, because when the audience loses trust in a broadcast outlet, they tend to run away from them. And when we see the ratings drop, as they have for several of the left side of the mainstream media outlets, you see things happen like the Joy Reid show is gone. You see the entire staff of the Rachel Maddow show get fired, and Maddow is now being told, you can't do this one day a week for $25 million. You got to work again a little bit. And you see at ABC News yesterday, there was the elimination of 200 positions inside ABC News. The View is apparently still on the air. And yes, The View is part of ABC News, which has always astounded me. So the capitalist free market economy that will not support a network certainly has a way of exacting a price against them. Now, if you violate the FCC standards for language, cursing and stuff, you can be fined. And in many ways, the fines are broken down on local levels. If you're on a syndicated radio show like this one and you drop one of the 7 words, you can be fined based on how many stations you're on. It can be very costly. The FCC has adjusted some of the regulations over the years to include something called a fleeting expletive, which is kind of interesting, meaning if you didn't go out there to intentionally curse and it just happened as a reaction, they're kind of giving you a free pass. But they still don't want you cursing on TV and radio. It's one of those things. But as far as licensing appears to happen on a local basis, not necessarily on a national basis. And folks are always saying, how come they can curse on cable? Well, they're not really FCC controlled. But ultimately, it is you and I, the audience, who are the real FCC. We are really the ones who make the decisions on who survives. The only exception to that seems to be what Chris calls National Panhandler Radio, NPR. And anything that gets the amount of taxpayer money support that NPR gets certainly should have to answer to the taxpayers as well as the FCC. And we'll see what happens on that, because I know this administration is keen on eliminating a lot of that support for NPR and the PBS system. It is patently unfair. It is not a level playing field, and the left is always talking about, fairness has to happen. Well, it's not happening in terms of broadcasting, and both the public broadcasting television shows and the NPR radio stations. It's just not happening. We'll watch that and see what goes on there. I want to get to a couple of important stories. Yesterday, the president announced that we are dead serious about getting the hostages back from Hamas. Dead serious about telling Hamas the clock has run out on you. It's time for you to hand over all the hostages. There are somewhere around 50 hostages left. And Donald Trump is not mincing words. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio was out yesterday talking about this and admitting that we, America, the United States, are in direct contact with Hamas, the terrorists, about getting these hostages. Some of them are Americans back.
You know how long we've been waiting for a long time in this country to have the kind of leadership with that kind of clarity. People don't realize the president meets with these people. He hears their stories. He's outraged, and rightfully so. He's tired of watching these videos every weekend where hostages that are emaciated are released and bodies are turned over, and sometimes it's the wrong bodies, and this 5 here and 3 there, and these games that are being played. And he's lost his patience with it. He's been very clear about this from the beginning. He's created space and time for this to be solved. And now it's time for seeing it come to an end. It's enough of this already. These people have been in captivity now for over a year and a half. These are monsters. It needs to stop. And you know, I wish there were more international pressure along the same lines here. But I'm glad he's putting those statements out. I think he doesn't say these things and not mean it, as folks are finding out around the world. If he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. He'll do it.
Yes, the President of the United States, great friend to the State of Israel, has said we are going to tell Israel to finish the job, and we're going to give them the equipment to finish the job. And I hope Hamas hears that loudly and clearly. I'm guessing they're going to. We'll see what happens. Again, there's currently about 56, 57 hostages or bodies of hostages that have yet to be turned over. I would love to see that be resolved very soon. And if it's not, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel flattened whatever is remaining in Gaza. We'll see. We shall see. Strong response. I do believe the most interesting part of this is the clarity that the president affords. He's just out there saying, okay, here's the reality. Deal with it or fix it. Let's grab a couple of calls here. A lot of calls coming in. 888-630-9625. Sam is in Burke, Virginia. Hello, Sam. Welcome to the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris. The good thing about the announcers being sick is we get to hear you, and you're really great. And
thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much.
You. My pleasure.
So, what I wanted to say was that, you know, while I do feel sorry for anybody losing their job, I think it's about time that this chainsaw is going to town in this area because, you know, I understand, you know, all the crying and everything because people are losing their jobs. But, you know, it took a long, long time for us to get to this bureaucracy that's this big debt and this big budget that this Washington, D.C. has occurred over the decades. And it's amazing what has been done in a few weeks. And I guess it's kind of a shock to the Democrats, and we saw that a couple of nights ago. And I'm just glad that it's happening. I know Clinton tried, but this man who has no loyalty to anybody except to the people of this country is doing something that, in the long run, people like that live out in Minot, North Dakota, you know, they don't think about it as close as we do. And in the long run, their taxes and their lifestyle is going to get better. But we all just have to have patience and wait. And again, I do feel sorry for those who've been fired. It's bad for anybody, anywhere in the world, to be fired from your job, especially when you're working on your pension and retirement and all that. But, you know, if you work for an organization that's not run to make a profit, well, even those that do work for organizations that make a profit, they have downsizing too. But anyway, it's about time, and I just think that if we all had patience, and we're going to hear all this crying, all this for days and weeks to come, but in the long run, it's all going to work, and maybe it'll all be done in 4 years. I don't know.
Well, I hope it's done in 2 years because I think it's going to be necessary to make sure we get the midterm elections in good shape, Sam. And one of the things that I hear from the Democrats all the time, it's too much, it's too fast, it's chaos. How long would you like this to take? You know, at what pace should we go? I welcome the chaos. I think the chaos is necessary. I think, and the Commerce Secretary, I think it was Howard Lutnick, or was the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, 2 days ago said there are 10 million open jobs in America. The mainstream media today is losing its mind, saying this is the biggest layoff of jobs for any February in 15 years. We had 170,000 layoffs in the private sector. There are 10 million jobs open in this country right now. We we don't have a shortage of jobs. We have a shortage of people willing to take those jobs. That's the issue. But thank you, Sam. Appreciate you being out there. Thank you for the kind words. Let us go to Chicago, where Alan is listening on the great WLS. Hello, Alan. Welcome.
Michael.
Yes, sir.
I thought I lost you. You sound like a misogynist. I grew up in the Marquette Park area, went to school in Englewood, and I was lucky I wasn't shot or stabbed. But, America needs a little history lesson. In 1929, all governments were 10.8% of the GDP. Today, it's nearly 40%. And if you add regulation, government controls half of our economy. We now wait for others to make decisions for us. I look also at the effects it's had on our culture. I'm almost 74 years old. We no longer rely on family. The nuclear family, the extended family used to be where we went for aid and help. Not now. We go to the state, and we want the state to do it for us. Problem is, this economy grew rapidly for 200 years until Lyndon Johnson took power. Now we're growing only because of debt. We aren't growing at all. We're burying ourselves in a hole. We're losing our freedom and our choice. And I'm fearful for this country, and really in the long run.
Well, I'm with you on that. I think the debt is one of the biggest threats we have, and I do hear more and more that people are concerned about it, and especially when you look at what percentage of our monthly expenditures go just to debt service. It's now as big as, if not bigger than, our biggest obligation. So that's concerning to me. But, Alan, did you call me a misogynist?
Misogynist. You were talking about mice before.
Oh, a misogynist. You lost me there for a minute. I was like, okay, what did I do? Yes.
You were talking about mice before.
I was. You got me, Alan. You got me. That's well done, sir. Very well done. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, the debt issue. It is certainly something that if we don't let Elon Musk point out the issues and Donald Trump can and the Congress can start taking away these horrific wastes of our money, we're going to find ourselves in a deeper hole. We're $37 trillion in debt. Somebody said if you paid Elon Musk $500,000 a day starting at the year zero, we still wouldn't come up with our $37 trillion in covering it's just a staggering number. But hopefully common sense and a little bit of willful cutting of these stupid expenditures will help dig us out of this. All right, I have to take a break. When we get back, just heard of maybe the dumbest thing ever at Starbucks. And I'm not a Starbucks customer. I used to be. But I was awakened to their wokeness. What is Starbucks thinking with this new policy? It's really stupid. I think you're going to appreciate it. It's Michael Pelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show. It is The Chris Plant Show. Michael Pelka, that's me, sitting in for my ailing friend Chris Plant. Get well soon, my brother. Miss you. And I'm sure the audience does too, but I'm happy to be here. I mentioned I want to talk about Starbucks. I also want to talk about a little retail news. Starbucks, a place I have patronized in the past, kind of lost my appreciation for them when they went woke. And, the pandemic didn't help. But I feel good about my decision not to be a Starbucks guy because I've just learned that Starbucks baristas now have to scribble on the cups when you order your cup of coffee. And so your job is to scribble and doodle on the cups? No. I can't imagine. I was talking to Michael Piercy about this, and Michael's wife apparently went through Starbucks and got a lovely message from the barista. I think it might have been flirtatious. So where does the line get drawn? That's the question. And they have to do it when it's going live. You can't pre-doodle on the cups. The only fun I've ever had at Starbucks was going in and ordering a small cup of coffee. I know it's called a tall, and when they ask you for your name, you just say Bueller, and then you leave. So the barista has to stand there and go, Bueller? Bueller? Anybody? Yeah, I know, it's a simple thing. Now, in other retail news, I would like to suggest, if you're not a Target customer, that maybe you consider it. I stopped shopping at Target about 5 years ago because they went really woke. Target used to say, you could use any bathroom you want. No, thank you. And then they had the incident with the displays in the front of the store targeting kids with all the trans materials and all the bathing suits with the tuck pouch in them, all the weird stuff they were doing. So I swore off Target years ago. Well, Target said after the election and inauguration of Donald Trump that they're walking away from all the DEI crap. And the left has lost its mind, so they have started a 40-day boycott of Target, started yesterday. 40-day boycott of Target, which means I am forgiving Target, and I'm going back and executing a boycott. You might be boycotting Target, lefties, but I will be pushing a red cart around the store and doing my grocery shopping at Target Boutique. You have to reward good behavior, which I think walking away from DEI and getting back to meritocracy, that's good behavior. All right, we have so much more to get to. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.